This House is in session. Minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday, February 7th, 2023, to be confirmed.
Thank you,
Leader,
Mr.
Government Business.
Thank you. Move that the aforesaid minutes be confirmed.
The question is that the aforementioned minutes be confirmed. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. The aforementioned minutes are hereby confirmed.
Announcements by Your Honor.
Message from the Honourable the Senate to the Honourable the House of Assembly. The Honourable the Senate has the honour to inform the Honourable the House of Assembly that at its sitting on Wednesday, 25th of January, 2023, the Animal Health and Veterinary Public Health Bill 2022 was amended in the following term. Clause 1 was amended by deleting the word 2022 and substituting the word 2023, therefore, and that clause should now read, this act may be cited as the Animal Health and Veterinary Public Health Act 2023. Further, the Honourable the Senate has the honour to inform the Honourable the House of Assembly that at its sitting on Wednesday, 8th of February 2023, the final appropriation 2021 to 2022 bill 2022 was amended in the following term. Clause 1 was amended to read as follows. This act may be cited as the final appropriation 2021 to 2022 Act 2023. And the Honourable the Senate transmit the amended bills to the Honourable the House of Assembly, inviting concurrence in the amendment to the bills, dated the 8th day of February 2023, signed, President.
Messages from Her Excellency the President, petitions, papers.
Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I'm commanded to lay the estimates of revenue and expenditure 2023-24, as well as the schedules of personal emoluments 2023-2024. I'm also commanded to lay the annual reports and audited financial statements of Hotels and Resorts Limited for the year ended 31st of March 2022. And also commanded to lay the annual reports of the National Insurance Board, audit of accounts of the retraining account for the years 2016-2020.
Government notices.
Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice of the Appropriations Bill 2023 and also to give notice of a resolution to approve in accordance with Section 5 of the Land Acquisition Act, Cap 228, the compulsory acquisition by the state of the parcel of land situated at Lot 5A, Waterford in the parish of St. Michael in this island for a public purpose, namely the construction of a district hospital. Also give notice of a resolution to approve in accordance with Section 28C of the Land Acquisition Act, Cap 228, to approve the sale of a parcel of land, the property of the state, situate at Lot 13 at Lower Estate in the parish of St. Michael in this island, to Egg Strong Holdings Limited, a company incorporated under the Companies Act, Cap 308.
Private members' notices, notices of questions, reports from select committees, first readings of bills.
Honourable Leader, Government Business.
I beg to move the first reading of the Appropriation Bill 2023.
Second, please.
The question is that the aforementioned bill be read a first time. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. I think the ayes have it.
Statements by ministers, congratulatory and/or obituary speeches, personal explanations, motions for leave of absence, oral replies to questions, notices of motions for the adjournment of the House on matters of urgent public importance, Orders of the day.
Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of standing orders 6, 16, 18, 20, 42 subsection 5, 43 and 44 for the remainder of the day's sitting.
Question that the aforementioned standing order be suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. The aforementioned standing orders are hereby suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting.
Government business, sir.
Government business is the order of the day.
Order number 4, sir. In the name of the Honourable Minister in the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs, to move the passing of a resolution that the Barbados Fiscal Framework 2023 to 2024 to 2025 to 2026 be debated in Parliament, and that any recommendations made in respect of the Fiscal Framework 2023 to 2024 to 2025 to 2026 be considered by the Cabinet.
Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise this morning inspired as it is Valentine's Day, and I know that whilst the country will be busy engaging in amorous activity, this honourable chamber has the responsibility still, sir, to signal to the country our commitment to not just prudent management, but really and truly, sir, ensuring that we can facilitate and provide for the improvement of services to the general public that they expect, and really and truly, sir, to ensure that the due care and attention that as members of Parliament, as ministers of government, leading our respective ministries and agencies, that we can continue, sir, to be able to deliver the mandate of each institution, but being very clear in our minds, sir, that whilst we have been faced with significant challenges over the last 4 years, that the government continues to adopt an approach that will deliver not just on the macro fundamentals, but that we will improve, sir, on the lives of ordinary Barbadians. And so the love, care, and attention, sir, that this government has demonstrated, certainly since we have come to office, by first and foremost, sir, responding to the mission-critical issues that we identified that needed to be resolved, sir, in 2018. We were able to do that, sir, because we came to office with a specific plan, sir, which allowed us to deliver those very critical things that people had observed had gone a-begging, sir, under the last administration. And therefore, this fiscal framework resolution, sir, as outlined, and I will share some of the details this morning. Much of what is here, sir, certainly has made its way into the revised BERT 2022 program. But it is important, sir, that as we have laid estimates in this chamber this morning, that we identify and remind the public that the program upon which the government embarked coming to office was deliberate, sir. It was formulated with very careful attention to, as I said, ensuring that we could respond to improving those critical public services that had waned over the years, but that we could provide opportunities, sir, to ensure that our young people can feel as if they are a part of this economy, of this society, of this country, sir, and that they can go out into the world with confidence, sir, and apply their God-given talent in the best way that they can, sir. And therefore, whilst we had to fix very clearly and early on, sir, a situation that we found where our debt was unsustainably high, our foreign reserves, sir, they were very, very, very low in the context of what is deemed to be acceptable in international standards, sir, with just 4 weeks of import cover upon assuming office in 2018, sir. Also, the fiscal situation in the country, sir, was in a shambles because the government owed everybody, sir, from St. Lucie to East Point and everywhere else, sir, which, if you understand the context of how a government is supposed to care, sir, it means there must be trust between the government and the people, and the inability of the government to be able to do that which it was supposed to do. So if I supply goods and services to you, sir, the government, I expect that you should pay me. And therefore, what we found when we came to office was that there was some $1.9 billion in arrears, sir, in arrears. Not all in goods and services, but a significant part in goods and services, a significant part, sir, in relation to NAS contributions owed for public servants. You name it, sir, the government owed it. And therefore, it was incumbent upon us, sir, to not just fix the things that were affecting people directly, as you may be reminded, sir. None of us wanted to traverse the South Coast, sir, for any long period of time, because we all avoided the South Coast deliberately, because it really was, sir, a public health situation. But we addressed that, sir. We addressed that because the country Barbados, should never, ever, 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 sir, ever again have people issuing travel advisories, sir, because there's sewage flowing in the street. And the reality is, sir, is that whilst you can accept that things may happen from time to time, the reality is that your government, sir, has the responsibility to fix things as they arise, and therefore this government continues to demonstrate, as I said, that due care and attention with respect to the management of the affairs of this country. And so the fiscal framework, as set out in the document, sir, speaks to the fact that during the pandemic, sir, you would recall, we had to shift the debt to GDP anchor, which was the original target under BERT 2018, 60% by 2033. After we restructured the debt and things were on a downward trajectory, sir, the primary target of the program had to be shifted because of COVID. So it was our intention, sir, and just to make it clear, and I will repeat it again here because it seems as if people, or some people I should say, are behaving as if COVID didn't happen. So when we came into office, sir, just to remind you very quickly, we had a very specific program to run 6% primary surpluses. 3.5 for the first year, between October 2018 and March of 2019, and 6% primary surpluses were programmed, sir, for the next 4 years. Once COVID hit, we had to recalibrate because, as I indicated, sir, in another place on Sunday, when we lost the $2 billion in economic activity in 2020, it meant that $600 million in revenue, sir, was also lost because of that. And the government had to respond to a myriad of challenges, sir. So we moved from a 6% primary surplus to a 1% primary deficit, effectively, sir, meaning that there was roughly a $700 million adjustment because of the loss of revenue and the increase in expenditures that we had to undertake in relation to being able to keep driving economic activity, meant that we moved from that 6% primary surplus as the target to a 1% primary deficit. Simply put, sir, it meant that the target, the original target of achieving 60% of debt to GDP by 2030 had to be adjusted because it would have been no longer realistic or credible or would make sense to anybody to keep a target of 60% by 2033 when you had COVID, you had a significant shock to the economy, you had to adjust to respond to the public health pandemic. You had to adjust to respond to the NAS to be able to pay those 32,000 persons that were suddenly unemployed quickly, sir. You had to adjust to make sure that you can keep the hotels in decent shape, because whilst we did not know at the time, sir, when the economy would reopen, because we knew that at some point air travel had to resume. We just didn't know when. And therefore, we took a very strategic decision to ensure that, one, workers within the hospitality sector can get training, remain employed to be able to support their families as best they could, sir, even at a reduced, I believe it was 80%, sir, of their usual salary, was allowing the hotels to be able to green and do some innovations in that time to ensure that whenever travel resumes, sir, that we didn't have another problem where you would have had dilapidated plants by then, which meant then that there was a requirement for more and more capital to be able to reopen. And I believe, sir, that when one goes out into Bridgetown, Carlisle Bay, all now, sir, you will see thousands of people, as I did yesterday. I didn't go this morning, but yesterday when I went to my office, and there were hundreds of people on the beach enjoying themselves. And that is the kind of activity that we know that, given the strategic decision that we took to provide those resources, that we were doing so, sir, in the best interest of Barbados. Not necessarily in the interest of the hoteliers specifically, sir, but in the interest of Barbados. Because there's a clear connection, sir, between the amount of activity that happens when an airplane lands, sir, to bring tourists here. And I think everybody got a very clear understanding as to the interdependence or the connection, sir, with respect to tourists coming here and the logistics around what happens as it relates to the economy. So tourists don't only just lie on the beach, sir, and enjoy themselves. There are thousands of people that are involved in providing goods and services, which once the planes stopped flying, sir, we all saw immediately the impact of that. So the government had to respond to a range of things, sir, whilst facing declining revenue, whilst facing declining economic activity, and therefore we had to adjust the primary target, which is the 60% of debt to GDP. But what was important to understand, sir, is that when we came to office, our debt to GDP ratio, sir, was 176.3% of GDP. By the end of March of 2020, sir, it was 118.9 debt to GDP, sir. We have restructured, we have started paying the interest on the domestic debt, we have concluded the external debt restructuring, sir, and we had addressed the immediacy of the debt situation as it was choking us at the time, sir. So our debt to GDP ratio was on a downward trajectory, and we had a clear plan, sir, very clear plan to pay down debt, was addressing the macro issues, pay down debt in order to make sure that in putting money back into the economy, sir, that we can help drive growth. And you would recall very clearly, sir, that early 2020, 3 years ago, there was a different vibe in the country, you know, sir. Because when we started in St. Lucie with the gathering, and people started to feel, and people were coming home, sir, and then we went to St. Peter, and I believe we were in St. Thomas, sir, in March, there was a feeling of optimism, sir, in the country that we all wanted to see. We were feeling it, sir, and we wanted it to happen. You remember the Prime Minister had said and give us a very clear mission that she wanted Barbados to be world class by 2027 in her New Year's, I believe it was in her New Year's speech. And there was a sense that the gathering and the planning for the gathering and reconnecting with our community, sir, there was a real sense that Barbados was on its way back, given the hard work that we had undertaken between May of 2018 and really and truly, sir, up until March of 2020 effectively. And it was very disappointing to all of us, sir, when suddenly this thing called COVID came out of the blue. And not just put paid to the regathering celebrations, but the entire economy, sir, was significantly impacted, as was the global economy, sir, for the avoidance of any doubt. So it didn't just happen to Barbados, it's a global pandemic. And therefore, we had to borrow. And the point I want to make here, sir, is that if we did not make those choices that we made, sir, in 2020, the Barbados economy today, I can say to you, sir, without a shadow of doubt, would be in a very, very, very different place from where it is today. And I believe, sir, that Barbadians understand the choices that we have made. It is our duty, sir, to continue to focus on those things that yes, the pandemic caused significant disruption in the delivery of a range of public services, but the government, for the last 3 years, ensured that we were able, sir, to maintain a level of stability in this country in quite extraordinary circumstances, sir, that I believe that this administration, sir, without blowing the trumpet, as you would say, sir, that we've done it, we've made it look easy, and to some people in the public, it may appear as if it is easy, but I can guarantee you, sir, that when I shaved this morning, all of my beard, sir, was gray. And when I first came into to this job, my beard was black. So I can say to the public, this is not an easy exercise. But it appears to be easy, sir, because this government was prepared to govern. Prepared to govern. And the fiscal framework is a demonstration, sir, of how we have been governing responsibly. Because we fixed the debt situation, sir. The reserve situation as it stands, $2.7 billion today, compared to $400 million, sir, when we came into office. The fiscal situation, sir, we are current with our arrears. We are paying down, continuing to pay down debt in the way that we want to be able to do, sir. We are continuing to honor our commitment, sir. And whilst every now and then, sir, as is the case, as we are trying to make sure that the digital processes are upgraded within government, but equally, sir, that we can work with the private sector to transition to operate in a much more digital space. Those process changes from time to time may cause a little hiccup, but the reality is, sir, that we've remained faithful and committed to the mission in relation to be able to ensure that government's fiscal situation, sir, remains steady, remains responsible, and capable, sir, of responding when required. And therefore, I would remind the public through you, sir, that whilst we were on that very clear trajectory, the debt had declined to $12.8 billion, sir, by the end of March of 2020. And therefore, the choice faced with $600 million, sir, decline in revenue. And having to respond to those things that I referred to, sir, we gave the National Insurance, sir, $143 million in cash, sir, to be able to pay those 32,000 persons, sir, who became unemployed, sir, unemployed, to be able to get those unemployment benefits. Because you would appreciate, sir, that if 32,000 people come at you one time, sir, and you try to use your own resources, I know that if 32,000 people came to you, sir, all at once, it will put pressure on you. Easy. And therefore, it is important for people to appreciate that in the normal scheme of things, as we work and employers pay our contributions into the NAS, sir, and with the normal ebb and flow of the economy, sir, as you know, you will have a situation where people, for whatever reason, contracts end, they become unemployed, and that's a natural flow throughout the year. And therefore, under normal circumstances, with NIS receiving its contributions, it will be able to pay people quite easily out of the unemployment fund. But it was unable to do so because within a very short space of time, sir, with 32,000 people coming all at once, it meant that the fund was exhausted very quickly, and we had to put in $143 million, sir, immediately in order for those persons to receive those unemployment benefits. Now, I want you to understand, sir, that we lost $600 million, sir, in revenue in that same year. But those persons who were unemployed, and I know that we had to do, and one of the, I don't want to say benefits, but what NAS had to do at the time, sir, because as I explained to you, in the normal scheme of things, you would take your unemployment form down to NAS. They will process it in the same way, sir, under normal circumstances, and you will get your money within 3 weeks or so of becoming unemployed. That process will normally take. One of the things that we had to do very, very, very quickly, sir, and that will work, as I said, sir, for normal circumstances where you have maybe 20, 30, 40 people every week coming for unemployment. But if you've got 32,000 people, sir, coming within 2 to 3 weeks, to be able to respond and play in the normal way would have been impossible. And so immediately the NAS had to upgrade their internal systems to process those applications and get those people paid, because the circumstances that we were faced with in April of 2020, sir, and May of 2020 were quite dire, because none of us knew at the time when the economy would reopen. But we had to get those people paid. And therefore, when we took that 43 million, and paid to the NAS, sir, to allow them to be able to pay those 32,000 persons who became unemployed because of COVID, nothing to do with the regular people, sir, that were already unemployed at that time, who still needed to get their contributions. But those 32,000 persons, sir, we were able to respond because we took a very clear decision that rather than to make the situation worse and send home public servants, we maintain employment within the public service, sir. We increase expenditure to be able to respond to the pandemic. And therefore, sir, we had to borrow. And therefore, under those circumstances, sir, we borrowed with the cheapest available resources that we had at the time, sir. We got an augmentation from the International Monetary Fund in terms of what they were supplying to the government. We got resources from the IDB, sir. We got resources from CAF, sir. And eventually, sir, we even got resources from the World Bank to help us close that gap. So the 143 million, sir, that we paid to NAS, plus the 150 odd million that we put into the BEST program, sir, to ensure that those hotel workers could be paid at 80% of their salary, that the property and the plant, sir, could be maintained to the extent that they could, sir. And that was for a 2-year period. For a 2-year period, sir. Plus, sir, the outfitting of Harrison Point, the increase of the expenditure as it relates to the COVID-19 program, sir. You would recall, sir, that we immediately ramped up the Adopt a Family program, sir, by being operated out of the office of the Prime Minister, sir, to be able to deal with the people who were directly related to COVID. But we also increased the provision to welfare, which the Honourable Member for St. Thomas can assure you. You remember, sir, when it stood in. No, I think we were at Worthing on the first day of the fiscal year, sir, April 1st, when I told you it was not an April Fool's joke, sir. The first time in the history of Barbados a government would come on the first day of the financial year, sir, to do supplementaries to be able to respond to the immediacy of the situation, sir. But we were able to do those things, sir, and that's just a snapshot, sir, of the things that we had to do over and above the regular provision of services, sir, to allow this country and ordinary Barbadians, sir, to be able to keep their heads above water, keep families, sir, as stable as we possibly could in the circumstance. And therefore, this government continues to maintain that the policies and the prudent fiscal management that we have been operating under is singularly, sir, responsible for our ability not just to provide for people, but it gives us a level of credibility, sir. A level of credibility that persons from the outside, sir, have determined that they have confidence in Barbados, because at the time that we needed it, sir, we asked, we were granted the funds in short order to allow us to be able to get through. Now, sir, I know that none of us in here or anybody in Barbados would ever want to even contemplate, sir, what would have happened, sir, what would have happened if the state that we found Barbados in May 2018, if we had faced COVID, sir, with the circumstances that were in place before we came to office. Because the truth is, sir, the last administration, sir, really had no sense of care or connection, sir, to the people of this country. And they demonstrated that very, very, very clearly, sir, with the way not just that they manage the public finances, but the way that they allow things to fall apart, literally, sir, in this country. And therefore, whilst it does not bring me any joy, sir, to make such a statement, it does not bring me any joy at all. But I know many Barbadians, sir, in my constituency, sir, who have come to me and said, you know, Mr. Straughn, if them fellas was in charge, boy, I don't know what would happen to me. And many people have told that to me, personally, sir. Personally. And they don't say it with any glee, sir. No glee at all. So therefore, when we hear noises on the outside saying that they're questioning the debt and questioning this and questioning that, sir, we didn't borrow money because we wanted to borrow money, sir. We borrowed money because under the circumstances, it required us to respond to the needs of ordinary people. And the people of this country saw exactly what we did with the money, sir. Because those grants that we gave to the small business, and I forgot to mention, sir, that in addition to the money for the NIS, for the unemployment, we also introduced, sir, as you would remember, the business interruption benefit, which went to self-employed persons, because it was a quite an extraordinary circumstance, sir. Nobody saw this thing coming. But every single sector of this economy, sir, was impacted by this thing called COVID-19. And therefore, we created a benefit. I had to give NIS the money to be able to provide for that benefit. And therefore, the responses that this government took during COVID, and we created the temporary COVID program, sir, and the reality is, COVID, for the most part, is over. And I say over, sir, in inverted commas, in the context that it is no longer a global pandemic. There are still lingering effects, obviously, with respect to some businesses and individuals as it relates to COVID-19. But we have seen a significant turnaround as it relates to employment in the economy, businesses uptaking, notwithstanding the global situation. And if, sir, that was not bad enough, sir, if that was not bad enough, we had the ash, and we had to pay to clean up the ash, sir. We had Hurricane Elsa, sir, and I know that the Ministry of Housing and the others are still to complete those houses. But we initially responded, sir, to put money into repairing those houses. And therefore, Barbadians, whilst, yes, they can ask legitimate questions about the debt. Of course, you can ask legitimate questions about the debt, sir. But bear in mind the circumstances under which, sir, we incurred that debt. Those circumstances. And therefore, as we move now to this current fiscal framework, sir, I want us to understand that, yes, the debt has increased. But the debt increased because the government didn't go on some spending spree, sir, just because we wanted to spend money. We had to respond to people. And that's the difference between the Barbados Labour Party, sir, and the Democratic Labour Party, because they would not have responded to the people. They never responded to the people in 10 years. They promised, but they never delivered. And therefore, I'm saying to Barbadians, the fiscal responsibility that this government continues to demonstrate, simply stay the course, sir. Stay focused. And therefore, allow us to be able to continue what is on tape, in a sense, as the Prime Minister said last year, fresh guard, because there are a new set of missions now that we now must undertake. And therefore, having dealt with the debt sustainability issue, sir, having dealt with the fiscal situation, having dealt with the foreign reserve situation, sir, we must now focus on getting growth in the economy. And getting growth in the economy, sir, is going to be absolutely important, not just for the fiscal framework, but really and truly, sir, for getting this economy back to, I say back, 2019 levels. But if we grow quickly, sir, then it means we can catch up on that 2-3 years that we lost, 2020, 21, and part of 22. We need to focus on growth such that we can get greater earnings within the economy, more people employed, sir, within the economy, so that comparatively, people, while still having some lingering effect of the impact of COVID-19, that people will be able to see a very, very, very clear way forward, sir, in relation to their circumstances. And therefore, the government has, we have outlined, sir, a number of budget priorities as part of the fiscal framework. And the first one, as the budget priority, sir, speaks to reducing poverty and inequality through protection, sir, of the vulnerable. And I believe Barbadians can see the sense of care, sir, and attention that we've paid with respect to reducing poverty and inequality, particularly in COVID, sir, and protection of the vulnerable. Because you would recall, sir, that one of the things that we did during COVID, even though it fast-tracked what we were planning to do, but we introduced, you would recall, sir, that elderly care program during COVID-19. Because we recognize, sir, that this thing called COVID was impacting our seniors, and the Honourable for St. Thomas introduced that program with the assistance of the National Assistance Board to be able to ensure that people went to run a check on our elderly persons in this country, to minimize as far as possible, sir, the prospect of, because people were at home alone, sir, that the care and attention that this government took to ensure that we deliberately put measures in place to be able to go and look after the elderly in this country, sir, is something that I don't want it to be lost on Barbadians. As it relates to poverty, sir, as you realize, we put resources in, we augmented the resources of the welfare department. We also introduced the Adopt a Family program, as I said earlier, sir, to ensure that people, because of COVID-19, did not have to suffer, sir, unduly because of a circumstance that certainly none of us had any role in bringing into existence. And therefore, we responded to make sure as much as possible that we were able to help keep people's heads above water. And let me at this point, sir, thank those many foundations and charities out there, sir, who also stepped up to be able to help us deal with that. And specifically, sir, as all of us and all Barbadians can attest, the Sandra V Trust, sir, as you know, did significant work in helping ordinary families to be able to be the vouchers, sir, and that program, which I know, sir, went a long way to help many thousands of Barbadians during the COVID-19. But this government remains committed, sir, to being able to focus on the protection of the vulnerable. I know that the Honourable Member for St. Michael South, whilst there's been a little bit of a furor around recently about as it relates to legislation and matters, the reality is that this government has always been on the front foot, sir, with respect to looking after the elderly in this country. And therefore, I don't want it to be lost on anybody, sir, in here or outside, to forget that it is us, sir, that introduced the elderly care program to augment what the NAB was doing, sir. We also have plans to augment the alternative care, the elderly program that the Ministry of Health, sir, is doing. And just for the benefit of the public, sir, remind that last year we voted some monies for the BTII, sir, to be able to design a new geriatric hospital. And as we will come to discuss, as estimates have just been laid, that we have provision, sir, for some 30 million or so, sir, to begin the construction of that facility very, very, very soon. And therefore, it should not be lost on Barbadians, the commitment, sir, of this government to the elderly in this country. And therefore, whilst some may get in the paper, sir, and try to steal whatever they're trying to steal in terms of tender, this government's record, sir, as it relates to caring for the elderly is second to none. Second to none. Sir, as it relates to increasing the long-term competitiveness of the tourism sector, well, sir, as you know, as part of the BEST program, we sought to ensure that the hotels were able to digitize and upgrade their systems, green their facilities. We're working on no airlift, and I know that the Honourable Minister for Tourism will be able to elaborate more on that. But the reality is, sir, we have seen, even in the midst of the pandemic, new attractions coming on stream to be able to augment the product offering in the country. And now that we're fully reopened, sir, there is very, very, very strong investment lined up to be able to help augment the tourism sector. Reducing unemployment by training staff and investment in renewable energy, sir. As you know, sir, this government, from day one, sir, started the National Transformation Initiative. I remember, sir, one of the very early social partnership meetings that we met, sir, and we agreed that we would take the contributions from employers that were going to the severance fund, sir, and that we would put 50% to the unemployment fund and 50%, sir, to the training fund. And that training program, sir, has been funded by those resources under the training levy. And thousands of Barbadians, sir, have already started to engage, not just on the Coursera platform, but I know that the Honourable Member for St. Philip West, with the establishment of the construction gateway, to be able to bring more persons to be able to acquire skills. The Honourable Member for St. John continues to work with the Barbados Youth Advance Corps to be able to ensure, sir, that we can get jobs and training for young people. And the Honourable Member for St. Peter, sir, in relation to the first jobs initiative, sorry, Job Start Plus, is working with employers, sir, to be able to further provide opportunities for employment for young people. And therefore, it cannot be lost on anybody, sir, that this government's record with respect to providing training opportunities, especially for young people, is equally, sir, second to none. Strengthening resilience to natural disasters and climate change, sir. Sir, I can speak on a range of things here, but yes, the HOPE program has started and will accelerate certainly and I know the member for St. George South will ensure that that happens very quickly. But equally, sir, you would recall that there are a number of reservoirs, sir, that were repaired during COVID by the Water Authority that this government, sir, put the resources to be able to ensure that when the assessments came to us and said that the reservoirs were pretty much at the end of life, sir, they were maintained just like everything else. You would pass, sir, and you would see things up the place, and you want to know why they ain't got no water, and the next, the third, sir. This government, sir, provided resources to the Water Authority to be able to upgrade the reservoirs, sir, not just in urban Barbados. As you know, the one at Fort George was replaced, but many reservoirs were built, sir, across rural Barbados to be able to provide relief, sir, to the thousands of Barbadians who were without water, sir, for many years under the last administration. And therefore, we believe that we have already demonstrated, based on what we have done, our commitment, sir, to building resilience and against natural disasters and climate change. Review of the tax system to broaden the tax base and lower rates, sir. We've already done that. We are continuing to look at ways for how we can remove, where possible, sir, move further from direct taxation to indirect taxation, sir. But that's something that will be ongoing, and we will continue to achieve that. But let me, for the benefit of the public, remind them that the tax reductions that were introduced, sir, in 2019 and indeed in 2020 means that, as well as the compensatory income credit, sir, that most Barbadians are paying less taxes today, sir, than when we came into office in May of 2018, and that is a matter of record, sir, and should not be forgotten. Significant reduction, sir, of tax expenditures. This is an area, sir, that we will address because we have seen over the years as concessions and stuff are granted, an accumulation of a large amounts of tax expenditures, which is basically, sir, we have no foregone, and therefore this is something that in a post-COVID environment, it was our intention, sir, as part of the original phase 3 of BERT to address this, but clearly the pandemic meant, sir, that we could not proceed at that time, and therefore that's something that we plan to do this year. Pension reform and comprehensive procurement framework, those works are ongoing, and I will leave that for the honourable member to address as appropriate, given the consultations that have taken place within the context of the public. But as it relates to the procurement framework, as it stands, the public procurement process is set to be digitized, sir, and we are intending to be able to launch that fully this year, and therefore that's something that we'll come back and give more specifics on. Again, upkeep and renewal of the capital stock, sir, and expansion of the infrastructure necessary for investment. This is a range of things, sir, and that includes roads, sir, the upgrade of the sewage, the sewage plants, sir, and making sure that those hard sets of infrastructure are working. And as I mentioned earlier, to ensure that we don't get any undue advisories placed against it because of a failure to be able to address some of these issues, but clearly to make sure that things are working, sir, in Barbados. Some of the other work that is being done is also on the digital side, and therefore it's something that we believe that with the hard infrastructure as well as the soft infrastructure, telecoms and the digital payments and the like, sir, that we should be able to bring more investment to Barbados, but equally, sir, that ordinary Barbadians will be able to do more domestic investment because of the works that have been done. You would recall, sir, there's work being done in the Scotland district, specifically which is being funded by the Chinese government, sir, to be able to rehabilitate the road, sir, within the Scotland district. That, sir, and that's scheduled to be completed over the next 2 to 3 years. That stabilization effort, sir, will bring an opportunity for new investment within that space, whether it is agriculture or any other commercial activity. You'll be able, sir, or even potentially residential, depending on what may be allowed with respect to the resilience being built against land slippage. You will see new investment in that area, which can only bode well, sir, for the whole of Barbados. So the capital stock, meaning the hard infrastructure in the country, sir, is going to be part of how we drive growth moving forward. Transforming the public sector, sir, through fiscal and debt consolidation, sir. We've already started on this process, but you members were introduced, I should say, sorry, to the new mission, the principle of the new mission economy, which really and truly, sir, is just upgrade, if you like, with respect to what we came in and we set as the mission critical agenda to respond to that crisis. But in a post-COVID/poly-crisis world, sir, it means that we must be absolutely focused on the missions and who will be required to participate in getting that done. Financial support and facilitation of innovation and entrepreneurship, sir. Clearly, we want to be able to continue the support that we've given to not just the trust loan program, sir, but to augment the various funds that are out there with respect to supporting innovation and entrepreneurship. And therefore, we have worked very, very, very hard, sir, over the last year or so, to the point where in September of last year, you would recall we had the first Afro-Caribbean Trade and Investment Forum here in Barbados, with the support of the African Exim Bank, sir. And as you would recall, sir, there is some US $1.5 billion in support, which is intended to be able to help drive exports on trade specifically, sir, but certainly exports for Barbadian companies, as well as companies across the region. And therefore, with access to these resources, it means that the plans that I know the Honourable Member for St. Philip South has for agriculture in this country will be capable, certainly, of execution, because the funds will be made available to be able to ensure that the export capacity is there with respect to getting, not just in responding to food security, but, as I said, driving the export process. And whilst that is part of how we facilitate, sir, the reality is it means that we now must transform everything that we are doing in the country to be very business focused, and therefore that will require some level of training to be done within that space. Providing expenditure to facilitate the movement to go green, sir. The Smart Energy Fund program obviously is there. We've done it with the BEST program, and we will work to see how we can get access to more resources as we are, as you know, Under the new extended fund facility, Barbados is also accessing the resilience and the resilience and sustainability fund, sir, under the IMF, and therefore we will be working out very, very shortly what are the areas with respect to how we will be able to fast track the climate resilience and going green and these matters in relation to these expenditures. Enhancing food production and food security. As I said, I know the Honourable Member for St. Philip South can speak more exhaustively on that, but that is a critical pillar for not just protecting Barbados, but I believe as part of the region's effort to reduce the imports by 25% by 2025, that is going to be critical not just for our own survival, but opportunities for many young people across the country. Building resilience in the housing market, sir. In conjunction with the renewable energy, that is primarily, sir, the HOPE program, which is designed specifically to allow for us to reduce the cost of construction or the cost of building, I should say, getting the property to homeowners, and therefore the HOPE program is intended to be able to mobilize much of the domestic private savings into that space, and therefore allowing persons to be able to own their homes at varying levels in Barbados. Boosting export capacity of traditional and non-traditional goods and services. I know that the BIDC/Export Barbados is working with various stakeholders to be able to help drive that, and with the the African Exim Bank to be establish an office in Barbados. We are also in the process of establishing our own version of an export-import bank. We know that we will be able to have those structures, not just for physical goods, but equally, sir, of those persons who are desirous of in fashion or gaming, video game programming, you name it, sir, traditional and non-traditional. And therefore, there will be an opportunity for people, once you get access, you make yourself available with the right training opportunity, sir, we will be capable, sir, of doing many things. And therefore, one of the things that we are focused on is to ensure that whilst there's much talk about diversifying the economy, sir, in essence, what we're doing is really building economic resilience. Because economic resilience, by being able to leverage the global space, notwithstanding, sir, as you will appreciate, you're operating in a very dynamic space, and therefore there will be winners and losers. The reality is that once we're able to get our specific share, then it means then that our citizens will be able to earn a much higher, income. But specifically as it relates to return on any investment, it means that the potential for persons to then mobilize those savings that are indeed on the banks or in the credit union movement will be capable of attracting a higher rate of return, simply because, sir, effectively you'll be investing, sir, in our people. And we really, sir, must have the confidence. We really must have the confidence to back ourselves. And that's something, sir, that we hope Barbadians will see, that in the execution of government's fiscal program and the continued confidence of the international and indeed, sir, the regional community, that Barbadians at home will equally see these opportunities, grasp them, sir, and be able to participate, as we want the growth, sir, to be as inclusive as possible. Develop a licensed park, sir, as part of the critical thrust to build out the bioeconomy. Currently, sir, the leader is rum in terms of export, sir. And I know there's a very aggressive plan, sir, to move from $100 million to $1 billion, sir, within the next 7 to 10 years. And that is doable, sir. It is very, 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 very doable. But it means, regrettably, sir, that some of us may have to stop drinking as much of the rum, sir, and invest in the rum bonds. Invest in the rum bonds, sir, if we are going to transform this part of the economy. Because we do have no, sir, and I say so, obviously, sir, tongue in cheek, but the reality is we now must see these as opportunities, sir, for ordinary Barbadians to go and buy a cask of rum, sir, see it age over the years, and in the same way that people will tell you about crypto and all kinds of things, sir, that have no connection to anything, sir. Rum in a bond, sir, appreciates in value. And when it's sold, sir, that value can be derived to you, the citizen. And therefore, this is just part of how we see Barbadians being included in the economic recovery. And therefore, it's something that we believe can be done. The establishment of the license part is also to focus on pharmaceutical research and other areas as well, sir, which is intended, sir, to allow for the truth is, sir, we produce a number of chemists and biologists and scientists at the University of West Indies. Oftentimes, they either have to leave Barbados, sir, or they have to go and do something other than their specific focus. And therefore, we want to ensure that having made that investment, that focusing on building a licensed park to be able to do the types of research that is relevant, certainly to Barbadians, or to, I should say, to black people, black Caribbean people in particular, because most of the drugs, sir, are formulated for, they may be formulated for similar demographics. You would appreciate, sir, that those of us in the Caribbean encountered us, we have a very specific and unique experience. And therefore, that's something that I know that we are focused on seeing how we can build that out and to be able to manufacture not just pharmaceuticals, but be able to do the types of research that will benefit all of us. If is one thing that we should learn from the pandemic, sir, was that the distribution and the access to vaccines definitely meant that we were exposed, not just as a country, but certainly as a region. And therefore, Barbados intends to be able to help close that gap by being able to ensure that we have the capacity as we have some pharmaceutical production capacity on island already. The idea now is to ramp that up and to be able to not just manufacture drugs on the license, but to be able to do the types of research that will make sense given our healthcare profile in the region, and therefore allow us to be able to have greater sense of security when it comes to accessing drugs and the cost of accessing those drugs going forward. The establishment of our heritage district, sir, and the development of the heritage economy. The reality is, sir, that reclaiming our Atlantic destiny, in a sense, sir, has already started. And I know that there are great plans to be able to revive, to establish a heritage district at the Newton burial ground. But the reality is, sir, besides that expression, the work that we are doing with the African Exim Bank is specifically, but certainly with the outreach to Africa, this is going to be a very critical part of being able to leverage our heritage assets in a way that we haven't been able to do before. And lastly, sir, creating a balance sheet of underutilized assets under the soon-to-be created legacy fund. The reality is, sir, is that the government has assets and it is not leveraging those assets to the best of its ability. And given that we do have an equally plan to be able to do some offshore exploration within the gas space, we want to be able to have in place a fund which most countries would refer to as a sovereign wealth fund of that type, that would be able to ensure that we can, with the right structures, be able to leverage all of government's assets, put them into production to be able to drive streams of revenue within the offshore oil and gas sector. That revenues from that will be able to go into the fund in order to build a buffer, further resilience, sir, over time, because with each shock, whether it is COVID, sir, whether it was a volcano, whether it was Hurricane Nelson, sir, you recognize that it impacted Barbados directly and in a very significant way. And therefore, the fiscal framework and the program is designed to be able to help build economic resilience whilst being able to facilitate, sir, inclusive growth and to be able to drive investment prospects at all levels, sir, across the economy. And therefore, this is, in part, these are just a basic outline of government's budget priorities. I know we will get into greater details next week once the heads are called and we can get into further details in relation to what is laid in the estimates. But the reality is we will close this year, sir, this year meaning 2022-23 until the end of March of this year with a 2% primary surplus. Next year, 23-24, sir, the target is 3.5% primary surplus. And let me just remind the public, sir, just to be clear, when we did the debt restructuring, there was a 4-year grace period, sir, of principal. And you recall, sir, that the debt restructuring came into effect October 1st of 2018. There was a 4-year grace period of amortization, principal, sir. We only paid interest, over the last 4 years. So from October 1st of last year, we started repaying the principal. So, without doing anything else, sir, starting to repay principal means that government will automatically spend more. And that is something that we must understand. When we restructured the debt, we restructured it to give us a 4-year grace period from having to pay principal to focus on fixing, sir, the things that needed to be fixed. But we had 3 years of disruption of COVID. And we had to pause from the SOE reform that was intended to be the third round in 2020-21. And therefore, we now have to embark on that SOE reform right now in the context of being able to deal with paying our amortization. And therefore, the fiscal framework, the estimates as have been laid, are designed to accommodate these things. And therefore, when we speak to issues of being able to drive growth, when we had significant growth in 2022, notwithstanding the issues on the international market, the international economy, we hope that the geopolitics, sir, will not escalate any further to create any more anxiety. But as you know that, sir, we have given the country a commitment that we will continue to monitor and ensure that those things that we could ease, we ease, but we need resources, sir, to be able to drive government's program. And therefore, sir, as we speak to financing, I'm saying to Barbadians, whilst it was always our intention to come back to the market after the 4-year period, COVID meant that we had to do some interesting things. Well, you remember, sir, when we did the BOSS program, which allowed us to focus on executing a specific capital program to revitalize a number of government buildings that were not in use for a number of years. We introduced the BOSS program, which was well subscribed, certainly as it relates, the first one was in relation to public servants, to be able to enjoy that benefit. And as I say to my colleagues, I don't know how many of you would have checked, but on January 25th, sir, you would have received 18 deposits from the central bank, sir, into your account. And I check, sir, I tell people I don't export because credibility is important, sir. Credibility is important. Every January, sir, and July, the original BOSS payments are being made. And I don't want anybody to walk about talking about the government ain't doing this and doing that. But all of us, sir, in this chamber, and all the public servants and everybody else who still hold those original BOSS bonds would have received, sir, well, depending on how many strips you have, certainly 18 payments into your account, and you will receive again in July. And last year, sir, we had to introduce, because, again, sir, of the confluence of circumstances. You had COVID, you had the surges with COVID-19, which demanded cash and resources to be able to put to the health sector. You had the ash fall, sir. You had the Hurricane Elsa, all of which meant, sir, that from a financing perspective, we then took the decision, sir, to be able to issue the BOSS Plus program, which is available to the public. Now, here's the reality, sir. Here's the reality. Government's program has to be financed. Has to be financed. The Boss Plus program, sir, is 4.5% interest, sir. I do not know, sir, where in Barbados today that you can get 4.5% with relative certainty. Relative certainty. Now, that is not to say that investment don't exist out there to get 4.5%. But as we see it, we as Barbadians, sir, must now have the confidence, sir, the confidence to invest in your country. And it really, sir, makes no sense us having, even though, sir, and it's interesting because obviously with global interest rates rising, it means that global interest rates in terms of even on the concessional loans are equally rising. But the reality is, sir, is that we would rather pay Barbadians, as we have been paying Barbadians, and we've demonstrated that we are paying Barbadians with the settlement of the arrears for tax, NIS, as well as for goods and services that were owed by the last government. We paid those. We continue to stay current, sir, with respect to our obligations. We are paying those. And therefore, thank you. And therefore, our implementation, our record, sir, of this fiscal framework ought to serve, sir, as a strong record of performance that can drive, sir, investment, not just locally, but regionally and internationally, sir, into this country. And therefore, if people from the outside, sir, can have confidence in the government of Barbados, then I believe, sir, the people of Barbados ought to have similar confidence and seek advice, sir, as they should before they make any investment. Because I know there's a lot of noise around the place about investment and these types of things. The government has launched a financial literacy program, sir, through the Ministry of Energy and Business. The Honourable Member for St. James has been spearheading that on all our behalf, because it is important that people understand that in this current circumstance, sir, rather than every few months, sir, you're hearing that Barbados get downgrade and downgrade and downgrade and downgrade, which meant that under the last government, sir, the interest payments were going up and up and up and up. This government, sir, our record has been one of getting not upgrades with respect to our credit quality, but equally, sir, positive outlook with respect to the way that we've been managing things, which is a signal, sir, to the market that notwithstanding all that's happening around us, that the government's posture and policy implementation is such that people will have confidence in relation to that. And so, sir, the fiscal framework as designed, as I said, will deliver 3.5% of the primary surplus for 2023-24. And therefore, as we hope that there really, I will love, sir, about 3-4 years of just clear sailing. 3-4 years of clear sailing. No disruption of any kind, and we can show the people that not just we will turn this around, but the growth that we are looking for will come. But I know, sir, once I live in hope, and today being Valentine's Day, I would love that to happen. Yeah, I would love that to happen. The reality is you always have to adjust. And therefore, as we all do in our households, the government has to adjust to the circumstances that it's facing, and therefore it is something that we will continue to monitor. And as I said, at the end of it, our mission is to ensure that we can maintain the quality of goods and services that we're offering to the public, whilst being fiscally responsible, ensuring that we can create a climate where not local investment, also external investment is encouraged, and such that persons can not just get that rate of return, but certainly feel a sense that they are a part, sir, a part of the recovery, because we all suffered under COVID, and therefore it is our mission, sir, to ensure that as far as possible that we are all included, sir, with respect to the economic recovery. I won't bore you with the details of the fiscal outlook and all of those things, sir, but the reality is that our debt is on a downward trajectory in spite of the fact that obviously we still have to finance things because of the impact of COVID and as we unwind and do to this post-COVID era. But it was always our intention after the 4 years, sir, to come back to the market. Originally, under the original plan, it was to come back to the market at the end of the 4-year grace period, having said, hey, we've done this, now it's time to start issuing debt again. And we've had to do that in advance of that because of the COVID-19 circumstance. And both issuances have been successful so far. But the reality is that the regular cut and thrust of whether it's treasury bills or debentures and the like, sir, we now have to start a fuller discussion around that, because it makes no sense in our view, sir, that only people from the outside are investing in Barbados and people in Barbados are not investing here. And therefore, that engagement, sir, will continue with respect to the public. And it is something that we feel very, 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 very strongly that the different structures that we will put in place to be able to help finance government's program, whether directly or indirectly with respect to opportunities with some state-owned enterprises, I think that's something that will continue to unfold and is going to be critical for helping us to advance and improve the quality of life for Barbadians. And so, sir, pursuing macro stability continues to be our focus. Inclusive growth and the extent to which, sir, we continue to achieve intergenerational equity is important, which is why we're investing in those young people, sir, because they're the ones who have to ensure that they become responsible citizens, sir, pay the taxes like you and I, sir, which by paying the taxes, it means, sir, that you're helping to educate your children, whilst at the same time, sir, helping your mother, grandmother, or whoever, your aunt, your uncle, to be able to access the services that they need. Because without that, sir, and that is why the conversation piece around Social Security is so critical, because intergenerational equity is important. All of us in here, sir, benefited from people before us investing in our education, allowing us to be here, and therefore it is incumbent upon us as young people, sir, us as young people, to pass that mantle on, that mantle of responsibility, that, yes, us young people, that mantle of responsibility that we can't give up on your grandmother, but similarly, sir, you can't give up on your children, because without that continuity, sir, then Barbados, as we know it, may not be the Barbados that we want it to be. And we have always been committed, sir, because of our circumstance, to, within the families, to be able to have those mature conversations, sir, even though sometimes it may not be what you want to hear, but have those mature conversations such that we do not create any fear or any need for anxiety in relation to where we are going forward. And so, sir, I am happy to be able to say to you that this fiscal framework is an important continuation of what we are doing with BERT, what we started with BERT 2018, BERT 2022. The government will outline its program through the examination of the estimates next week. And I know that the Honourable Prime Minister will give her speech in a few weeks' time. But the reality is Barbados is in steady hands. We continue to demonstrate, sir, the same care and commitment and courage and courage, sir, that is certainly was required, sir, to meet the circumstances that we were faced, not just when we came to office, but the extraordinary circumstance that COVID presented, as well as the climate-related activities. And therefore, this fiscal framework, as crafted, I believe, sir, will continue to meet the needs of Barbadians. But as always, sir, the government remains committed to adjustment where required, that is responsible, to allow us to be able to move ahead in the right direction. And so, sir, with those very few words, I beg. Sorry, I'm sorry. With those few words, I beg to move that this resolution do not pass. I'm obliged.
Honourable member for the Microsoft Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Perhaps it is fitting that I am the next member to make an intervention after the close of the Honourable member who led, who referred certainly to the spirit of the promise that I made to the people of St. Michael South Central and the slogan of care, commitment, and courage. So I take that as a cue that it is appropriate for me, sir, to make my intervention now. To you, sir, and through you, I of course wish all Barbadians and everyone a happy Day of Love. However you profess or express that, and of course we're not just talking about romantic love, but all love to all people and our fellow Barbadians. I dare say that it is not just in that spirit of care, commitment, and courage, but also in that spirit of love and responsibility, which go hand in hand, that this fiscal framework of the government of Barbados is being discussed here today. And I want to take us right back to the beginning, to the origins of this document, to why it was required, to the framework in which it sits, the body of legislation and other operational activities of which it is a part. Because one may listen to the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central, who often comes to this honourable place to talk through you to the country about these issues, and think that he likes to come in here and lay documents, or that the government of Barbados likes to come in here and lay documents because that is what we enjoy doing. But sir, this is about a process of accountability. And when we come to this honourable place to talk about the record of this government, to compare it to previous records, to compare it to what we might do in the future, it is not to boast, it is not to gloat. Certainly in my case, it is not to find fault unduly. It is for the purpose of accountability. And so the fiscal framework that is being discussed here today is a part of a system of transparency, accountability, and integrity of government. And we will, sir, have occasion to talk about this some more in the future when we discuss the integrity legislation. But I want to emphasize that it is not just a piece of integrity legislation or an integrity bill that causes government to do the right thing in the right way. And I take us back to the period before 2018, when there was much, I dare say, that was left to chance. There was a lot that we did not know about the government's operations, about the government's fiscal operations, because we were not told. There was a lot that we did not know because the then government did not think it appropriate to come back to the people and to report adequately on what was being done in their name. At that time, there was a lot of guesswork. We saw a certain level of printing of money at the level of the central bank and of the national insurance, and we could only respond after the fact because we were not sure what was the framework, what were the rules, were they being contravened or not. Government was not coming back to say, well, we had to do this notwithstanding this rule because we found ourselves in this position. And so the fiscal framework stands in the context of the Public Financial Management Act of 2019, which this government brought at that time to be able to say to the people of Barbados, you will always know what we do in your name. We are accountable to you. And I want us as Barbadians to understand what is contained in that Public Financial Management Act, because it is not just a declaration of assets of MPs and board chairmen and deputy chairs that keeps us honest. It is not just an integrity bill or integrity legislation that keeps us honest. The Public Financial Management Act 2019 tells us how every organ of the government, how every officer of the government is meant to operate, is meant to perform, is meant to behave relative to other departments of government, relative to the Ministry of Finance, and relative to the people of Barbados in whose name we operate and whom we serve. Similarly, the Central Bank Act, which, again, legislation is alive and from time to time needs to be amended. I suspect there will need to be further amendments. But we did bring amendments at that time to be able to say, listen, there has to be a ceiling, there has to be a limit on the amount of printing that can be done by the central bank. And so this fiscal framework is a part of the system of accountability. It is not just a document that we like to put on a shelf because we like to write things, even though it is, I dare say, well written and easy to understand. And I start at the beginning in the document, which features a statement of responsibility, referring to the Public Financial Management Act, the third schedule, and declaring that the information contained in the fiscal framework is reliable and meets the information requirements of the Act. And it names some exceptions, because these are the kinds of data sets, expenditure data in administrative and functional classification and so on. These are some of the things that vary, that change, that based on when estimates are approved, some of this data will change, and these are some of the data sets that we expect are not set in stone in documents such as this. But the things that I am pointing out to you are, I do so, sir, not as an administrative exercise, but to say that government has a responsibility to report duly and truly to the people it serves. And this statement of responsibility features the signature of the minister responsible for finance and the signature of the director of finance. And I say these things because I want us to understand that this government takes seriously and must continue to take seriously its duty to report and to be accountable. And I go further because, sir, some of the feedback that I will share here, some of it has already been shared with my good friend, the honourable member who led, but it is my duty to speak it into the record here so that it stands as a recommendation of this Parliament. Because similarly, the recommendations of Parliament and government's response to those recommendations are also to be made a public record and to be made available on an official website of government. And as a part of this fiscal framework, Cabinet has a responsibility to consider the recommendations made by Parliament in respect of this document. They're not required to make changes based on those recommendations. One can only recommend. But I go through these things because I want to demonstrate that this is not an academic exercise. The things that I stand here and say today, sir, must in some ways be considered, and any comment of any member standing as a record of Parliament has to in some ways be considered as the proceeds of this debate, with a view to taking them forward as recommendations to the Cabinet. And so, in that regard, I want to make some observations on the document that is before us. I should say, however, that as a part of that system of transparency, the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs also has a duty to bring to this honourable place the Barbados Economic and Social Report, which is meant to give us a bit more flesh on the performance of its programs. And I want to encourage that ministry to make sure that that report forms a part of the reporting of this government to the country. I think that perhaps it must come for a few years now. Perhaps some kind of omnibus report to be able to cover those years, but it does have to come and to be laid and considered by this honourable place, because it is a part of the system of accountability to the people. And so I say all these things because, often I think there's the notion that we are just talking about things that we've done because we want to look like we are earning our pay, or we're earning our place. But really, the duty of a government is to be accountable. And so when one hears us, when the people of Barbados hear us giving these reports, it is because we were sworn so to do, but also because, and I can only speak for myself, I would never want to be associated with the practices or absence thereof, the lack of fiscal rectitude and fiscal discipline and accountability of the administration that preceded us. The reason that we brought the PFM Act was so we could never return to that place under this government or under any other to come. And so I want us to understand that this is about accountability. It's not just about coming here and reciting numbers to the people. But even as we share those numbers, even as we share the outlook, even as we talk about what has happened in the previous year and what we expect to happen with respect to debt and the primary balance and all these things, I also want us to understand that these macro issues are not similarly academic. The reason that we have to be fiscally responsible is the same reason that you have to do that in your household, sir. The reason that we have to know how much we have to spend, how much debt we have, is so that when we go to the supermarket, we know whether we can get the big cabbage or the small cabbage. We know what is our elbow room, what is our wiggle room to make expenditures on behalf of the people of this country. So I say that because I want us to understand that projecting expenditure, knowing how much we take in revenue, knowing how much we borrowed, all of that tells us what we can spend on in education, in healthcare, in road infrastructure, and so on, in the name of the people in Barbados. It is not an academic exercise. It tells us what we have, what we can spend, and how we must prioritize, given that we don't have all to spend that we might want to spend. And so, in that regard, I want to focus on perhaps three things in this fiscal framework. The first of those has to do with something that the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central took some time to review, and that has to do with the COVID expenditures. Now, there has been a lot of discussion on the fact that we borrowed, and how much we borrowed and when and so on. And I am almost loath to repeat the rationale for borrowing, to say that if you are building a house, you do not go and take up every cent that you may have and start to build the house. Because if something happens to you tomorrow, you don't have that liquidity to be able to buy anything that you need. What you would more likely do, although some of us choose not to go that way, and some of us will start taking up every cent we have and start to build the house, and whatever comes. But what you're more likely to do is to borrow to build a house. And why? Because you will continue to get value from that asset as you pay towards it. As you repay the loan that you took to build the house, you continue to get value and to build value in that asset. And that is why you borrow, not for day-to-day expenditures. You borrow for long-term infrastructure that will continue to serve the population today and future generations. And so when people say, are my children going to be expected to repay this debt? Yes. And why? Because your children will continue to get the value from this asset that is being created. It is just like we, in some ways, are repaying debt for assets that were built, that were constructed, that were established 20 or so years ago, because we continue to get the value. Now, the responsibility of government is to make sure that it makes the right decisions about what that debt should go to pay for. It must be something that gives us value. But the notion that a country is not to borrow when every country in the world borrows, I again want to put that to bed. The question of the level of debt is important. We have to make sure we can service it. We have to make sure that servicing the debt doesn't stop us from putting money into school meals so that our children can eat. I am convinced as of today that we are at a sustainable place when it comes to debt. Because in 2017, coming into May 2018, we were paying 68 cents out of every dollar earned by the government of Barbados towards debt service. The more recent number that I have, and the member for Christchurch East Central, once he wraps up, may have a more recent one. But to my last knowledge, it was about 32 cents on the dollar that we were paying towards debt service, which means we have 68 cents to spend, to invest in the young people of Barbados, to spend on cybersecurity, to spend on education, to spend on a new facility for the Youth Advanced Corps. That is the difference, and that is why these questions matter. But I also want, and perhaps my first recommendation would be, that the fiscal framework lay out a schedule of expenditure that is, one, related to COVID and any other similar eventualities that have a fiscal impact, so that we see in one of the schedules and one of the appendices to the framework exactly what was the spending on these kinds of activities. Because it is right here on page 10 of the framework. 10 million to the Welfare Department to meet the additional cost of grants, 10 million to the Household Survival Program, 10 million to the Adopt a Family Program, 3.5 million to the National Assistance Board to establish a community elder care program. Sir, there is perhaps no other country in the world that in the midst of COVID invested in the household economy. Had people going into households to provide care. People don't realize that care is an economic good, you know. Care is something that reproduces your economy, because none of us would be in here dressed and cared for and presentable this morning unless we had care at some point along the way. I'm not going to get into conjecture about who ironed their own clothes or who made their own breakfast. But care is what causes us to be here to produce in this capitalist system that we regrettably must be a part of. And so this is a government that invested in care, community elder care program, going into households and providing care in the midst of COVID, when people were less able to do so. 48.8 million for the management of the COVID-19 program by the QEH. 10.7 million to the QEH to assist with current operations. 23.8 million to the Transport Board to offset the fact that there was an absence of movement. 3.5 million to provide financial relief to vendors, 10 million to the Ministry of Education in the context of COVID. And I say to the member for Christchurch East Central, because I gather that this is a snapshot, that we should see all the expenditures in this fiscal framework. We as the people of Barbados must be able to understand exactly what it means to be able to mobilize emergency resources and then spend it for the purpose for which it is intended. And to be able to satisfy ourselves that that is in fact what has happened. But the fiscal framework goes further in explaining any deviations in revenue outturn. Imagine that, and a member who led will recall that in 2016, 2017, when we sat as part of an opposition economic team at the time, trying to understand what was happening with the economy, there was no such data that could be available to us. To be able to say, look, we thought we were going to take in this amount in revenue, and we did not. And you know why we did not? Here is why. Deviations in expenditure outturn. We were supposed to spend X and Y, but then COVID happened and we had to redirect some of these resources to health and to education and to the Ministry of People Empowerment. This is an explanation of what are the reasons that instead of going through Grosvenor Road, we had to stop short and come through Baycroft Road and come round. Because we have to explain why we took the decisions that we took. This is an exercise in accountability, and I don't want us to take it for granted. But further, and I made that recommendation on the record, so perhaps for the minister to consider. But I also want us to understand, and I should say to absorb, the priorities that the honourable member who laid out that appear on page 6 of this framework. Because again, this is not just about talking about GDP and debt to GDP and primary balance because we have those numbers and we can say them. These numbers mean something. These numbers and the programs behind them mean something to the people of Barbados. But I want us to be able to get behind the narrative and to get behind the words. There are several priorities outlined here, and a couple in particular draw my attention. One has to do with the target for a comprehensive procurement framework. And in some other place, I believe the Minister in Finance, the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central, mentioned the plans to establish an e-procurement system and so on. I want to remind us that putting something online does not make it efficient. And that we have some other issues to address with respect to procurement. We are aware of the value of government procurement when it comes to providing economic activity and providing opportunities for Barbadians. We said, prior to 2018, that we would use the government procurement system and the practice to be able to make opportunities available to all Barbadians. Now, we had, during COVID, to make some emergency decisions, and we said to the people of Barbados that we would publish information on any contract that we had to quickly put in place because of the emergency nature. Any contract over $1 million, we would publish that. Every time I get to my feet, sir, and this point is relevant, I will make it, that the publication of that information, whether in COVID or not, is critical to the trust and accountability of this government. Beyond that, the information on contract awards overall should further be made available. But in addition, I think that we also need to be very clear on the procurement methodologies that obtain when it comes to major capital works. Because the sheer volume of government goods and service and the sheer value, the amount of millions for which is responsible, means that we have to use it as an opportunity for people in this country and their small businesses to earn and to be part of the growth and to contribute. And I see no reason why we should not publish contracts over $1 million, as we said we would, whether in an emergency situation or not, why we should not publish contract awards of a certain size. But further, we need to also make clear the methodology by which consultants and businesses have been selected for major projects and major works in this country. And I say that because I have talked about the PFM Act, I have talked about the Central Bank Act, I've talked about the Declaration of Assets, I've talked about the pending economic and social reports that are to come to this place. And the way that we manage procurement must be a part of that. And again, one does not point out these things because one suspects that anything is amiss. Certainly one does not. But the only way that we will show that we will prove that we will give companies the assurance that when you bid on a project, it is considered in good faith. You know the selection method that we are using. You know the procurement method that we are using. You understand why you may not have gotten the contract. Making all of that transparent is also part of this exercise in accountability. And I caution, I do, that we have to maintain the confidence of those that we are contracting in this economy, few as they are, to be able to come in good faith to our procurement exercises and to feel that they have a shot. And I am cautioning that we have to make that very, very transparent. Because to do otherwise is to risk the onward and the ongoing development of the country. Because if I come to an exercise and I feel that I am not being considered duly and fairly within whatever framework you've laid out, I'm not going to come tomorrow. I'm not going to come next week. And so as part of this, I think that we need to, beyond the e-procurement, how are we allowing all actors to access, to have an opportunity to bid for government contracts and services, but also what in particular are we doing to help support the small business sector? I've seen in many cases where small providers frankly don't have the wherewithal to be able to be considered for projects. And while government has to satisfy itself that these actors can perform, we also have to expand the mandate of economic enfranchisement into something that is material. We have to be able to say at the end of this year or at the end of the framework period for this document, previously there were 10 small contractors. Now there are 20, now there are 30, now there are 40. We also need to report on that. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't hold them accountable similarly. That if individuals are not responsibly carrying out the activities under their contract, that we should not say to them, well, I'm sorry, we can't give you any more houses to build or we can't give you any more schools to repair. But let's make sure that, you know, we talk in economics about market failures all the time. That's why government is here. Because if we left it up to the market, all of the people who are already in the position to make bids and who have all the capital to satisfy the requirements will continue to get the contracts. The market failure there is that the smaller companies are less able to do so. And the role of government then is to come in and find ways to maintain its own integrity and its own transformational agenda and to execute, but also to make sure that those others can be a part of this inclusive growth that the member has been talking about. The third issue and final for me in my short intervention, sir, has to do with the issue of investment. And the list of priorities on pages 6 and 7 include two things that I wanted to mention. One is upkeep and renewal of the capital stock and expansion of the infrastructure necessary for investment, as well as creating a balance sheet of underutilized assets as part of a Barbados legacy fund. Now, the reason I twin those things is that I think that the register of assets should be the government's register of assets, underutilized or not. It is when we have that register that we know what's underutilized. But we need to know and see, what does the government own? Is it being used properly today? Can it be better used? And that will also help inform the issue of the upkeep and renewal of the capital stock. Because we have assets that if we don't start the work of maintaining them, that they will be less usable or perhaps not usable at all in the future. So I believe that a register of assets as a matter of public record also has to be established so that we understand how government can make use of what it has to the value of the people of Barbados. And similarly, we also have to find a way to be able to convert those. When we first came to service, we used to talk about 9 billion in savings. Now we're above 14 billion, I believe, in savings, domestic savings here in this country. Now, while that is a good indicator to the extent that it means that you can only save if you're earning something, it means that there's increased economic activity and people are able to save. It also means that there are these pent-up savings in the economy. People are keeping money in one place, whereas we want this money to go to other places. We want to see investments in things that can be productive for people. The member talked about boss bonds. There are other kinds of enterprises, and I'll give an example. I know someone who makes candles and sells, and these are exceptional products. I'm not much of a candle person myself, but it is a product that is doing well. All of us in here can name small companies that will not on their own go public and become publicly traded, but that we have to find a way to be able to, or provide a platform for people to say, you know what, I'm gonna bet on this young woman who's making these candles. I'm gonna bet on this young woman who's making these swimsuits. I am going to support real organic growth in the small business sector through my own savings and my own effort. What is the vehicle that allows me to do that? And so, yes, it may be good for the Ministry of Finance to say, well, we have savings and we believe this is good because it means that people are earning and so on. The pent-up savings mean that there are economic enterprises that are potentially going without investment, when they could be growing, when they could be employing more people, and so on. We talk about the need for inclusive growth, inclusive job-led growth, and that is important. The way that that happens, though, is one that I think that we have to make an intervention in, to make sure that we create the platforms where people can bet on each other, where we can bet on each other. Where we have the protection of some kind of mechanism so that it's not just us taking up, not just the member for Christchurch West taking up $100,000 and saying, man, take that and do what you gotta do, because then his investment will not be protected. But how do we create a platform where we have a protected mechanism where we can invest in fellow Barbadians? I know that there's some of us who, if we have $5, we want to bet $1 on a friend, on a colleague, and I think it is time for us to make these things happen. So, sir, I will not delay this place too much more, except to reiterate that I want us to appreciate how far we have come. And a gentleman said to me in the supermarket this weekend, I told him that I enjoy some of his social media posts because he's a hilarious guy that most of us know about, but I will not call his name. I told him that I enjoy his social media posts, but I can never respond because I can't enter the fray on such matters. And he said to me, man, you are a Barbadian first. You should be able to respond. And perhaps that is true. I am a Barbadian first. And because I am a Barbadian first is the reason I can take a step back and appreciate where we have come in the process of accountability. I feel sometimes we forget. There was a moment where if I had to do any research, if somebody in another country asked me a question, I could not tell you what was happening with the finances in this country in 2016, 2017. I did not know. I could not find it anywhere. Central banks stopped publishing data. We have now come to a place where we have ministries and departments reporting, I believe it is still by the 5th day of the following month, where we have systems for making sure that what we say we will do is what we are doing. And as this framework points out, if we haven't been able to do it, if we have a deviation, that we come back to people and we tell the people of Barbados why. I talk all the time about a culture of evidence. I want to see us in this country embrace a culture of evidence. Why? Because if we know and trust and believe that this framework that is signed by the Minister in Finance or the Minister of Finance and the Director of Finance is before us, then we can say, well, I know this was done because it is here. And if it is here and it wasn't done, then there are also avenues to address that under the strongest force of the law. But I want us to understand that we are now in a place with a government that takes accountability seriously. We had not had that for some time. And so I support wholeheartedly the exercise and the continuing work. I encourage us to expand and to embrace the procurement side of that by making all of that information similarly transparent, not just the awards, but also the process. When I submit a bid, are you just taking that because you want to compare it with others' best two or best three to be able to say, well, I have a record? Are you taking my bid in good faith? Are you considering it? Or are you just putting it in a drawer? I want to know the methodology, and I want to know who wins the award. Now, obviously, in Barbados, we have to be careful.
Remember has 2 more minutes.
Oh, dear. I'm wrapping up. Sir, I've had come to expect so much latitude from you that this is a bit of a jolt to my system. But
when I call time, I let the referee. When I call time, it is time.
I trust and believe you, sir. But do we have the faith that when we enter an exercise, that is what will actually happen? And while we have to make allowances for the fact that we live in a very small place, and so we have to be careful, to be practical, we have to be careful that we are not making victims of people who are only trying to play their trade. But I do think that we have to extend this fiscal rectitude and this transparency and the work that the government has done to that area of procurement. We need to be able to move the needle on investment. And I trust and I encourage the people of Barbados to continue to trust that this is a government that is on that path, continues to be on that path, to establishing real transparency, accountability, and integrity in this country. I'm obliged to you, sir.
Honourable Christ. Honourable for St. James South.
Right. Yes, I'm here with you now. I'm very pleased to rise today to support the issue of the Barbados fiscal framework. I want to congratulate the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central and the team that works assiduously with this government to help us to navigate probably some of the most difficult waters that we have ever had to navigate in our lives since we have become a nation. And one of the challenges for me, Mr. Speaker, is as I engage as an MP, as a minister, with stakeholders, as I engage with constituents, we recognize that everybody feels caught up in a whirlwind in which there's so much information. There's so many things happening domestically to us in our homes, in our neighborhoods, things happening at work, things happening in the nation, that our world right now feels a little topsy-turvy, and it's a little difficult for the average citizen to keep pace or to understand and follow all of the things which are being done. Because at the same time that we have these topsy-turvy situations, we are here as a government seeking not only to respond to the things that are happening, but to transform as we respond, keep the ship of state stable, and be able to build a sustainable social and economic framework that will serve Barbados for the long term. That's really what this is all about. And what this means, sir, when you translate it back to the community, it is to be able to give hope to people that there's a future for them in Barbados. It is about providing confidence that a person who has an idea feels that we are doing sufficient work to stabilize the country, that they can afford to step out and try something new. It's about giving comfort that an older person will feel that the generations who come behind them will not only have opportunity, but that they are living in a country that will help to take care of them in their old age. This is really what it is all about. At the center of everything that we are doing as a government is people. But it's a challenging road. It is probably one of the most difficult roads that we have had to walk, with many circumstances which have already been outlined by the Honourable Member, both Honourable Members that have spoken before. And this has resulted in creating a bit of a dizziness. And I appreciate what the Honourable Member for St. Michael South Central, she was walking down the road that I want to walk right now, in terms of seeing this as a journey. This fiscal framework is to help us to review the fiscal performance against the objectives that we stated to the people. This is what we are going to do. This is what we are going to achieve. And at the same time, we are seeking to present what is the current state of play. What are the macroeconomic circumstances that we are in at this particular moment, and how we want to respond. This is the point of having this fiscal framework. But the truth is, unless Barbadians understand that, they will get lost in our decisions. Why did you do this as opposed to that? Why did you fix this and not fix over here? Why did you take money and spend on this project when there's this project over here? And they can become confused if they don't understand that there is a guiding principle that guides the decisions which we are seeking to make every single day. And what has been presented to us in this economic framework, in this fiscal framework, is what are the things that govern how we are going to be spending the people's money. And I think that this is very important. The budget policy priorities that you find on page 6, Mr. Speaker, speaks about a number of things which the government is seeking to do when it is approaching how it manages the economy. And if we were to go back to the notion of a journey, sir, we live in an imperfect country. We don't have broad roads. We have traffic situations that make it impossible to get from one place to the other. What would normally take 10 minutes can take an hour or two. And we also have accidents that can take place. And all of this has to be taken into account by the person who's actually driving that vehicle. How many people the vehicle can carry? What's the record in terms of has it been maintained? Is it safe, etc.? Are the tires good? Are the brakes working? What's the condition of the vehicle? They also have to take into account the traffic. They have to take into account if there are accidents. So they have to actually listen to the reports on mornings to understand what is happening. And it's no different in an economy, and it's no different on this journey. One of the things that we have to take into account when we are looking at the development of the fiscal framework is to look at what are the internal needs and then look at the external realities. Balancing those two helps us to define what it is we are going to do. So you have to be able to keep the economy going. Just like with the vehicle, you have to make sure the vehicle is able to perform, that it has been properly maintained. And therefore you will see that part of the priorities identified by the government would be to increase the competitiveness of the tourism sector. Why? Because it provides jobs for the ordinary citizen in Barbados. It helps us to earn the foreign exchange that we need. It provides opportunities for people who have business in Barbados to supply those hotels. So increasing that competitiveness is not distant from the citizen. It is essential and central to the citizen being able to keep their family going and to be able to keep their households on a positive track. In order to keep the vehicle moving, you also have to reform your tax system, because from time to time your tax system will get out of whack, because constantly governments are being pushed here and pushed there, either from demands that people might make, either from certain conditions that existed 10, 12 years ago. You have to keep responding, but you have to keep examining your tax system to make sure that it is fit for purpose and is actually helping you to achieve what you are seeking to achieve. And one of the things that we would have done was to make sure, one, it is a simple motto that is often mentioned by the Honourable Member for St. Michael Northeast, that we have to share the burden if we're going to share the prosperity. And so one of the things that we've been seeking to do is to make sure that everybody is paying their fair share in relation to the tax burden. And what we've been trying to do is to lower it and broaden the inclusion, and at the same time be more efficient with collection. In other words, you will have businesses that are here getting waivers, you'll have businesses here getting exemptions and so on. You need to look at those things and ensure that at the end of the day, you are making sure that people are paying a reasonable share of the burden, while at the same time you're trying to help your businesses to perform. And the more efficient collection within the system is important, but again, something that we do sensitively given what are the prevailing conditions. In order to keep the vehicle moving, we have to expand investment, expand our infrastructure. So if we're going to attract people to establish businesses here, it is absolutely necessary that when they come, they find a country that is pristine, they find a country that has a good internet, a good IT system, they have the 5G. When they come, they have to find a proper network of roads, the availability of housing, and all the services that they may need in order to make that investment work. So sometimes, if you're a passenger in that particular vehicle, and you see money being spent that way, you might wonder, well, why did you not spend money on something else? Why did you not fix a school? Why did you not fix that road? But money needs to be spent in order to make sure that the economy is able to keep attracting the investment, and that means spending money on your infrastructure. I think probably one of the most perplexing things was when we had to fix the airport runway. There we were with all the ash, there we were with all the problems, and people were like, but look, people need money to go to the supermarket. People need money to go here and there. They did not appreciate the fact that if we did not bring that airport runway up to standard, that we would not be graded at a high enough grade to be able to attract the flights that we need and the air carriers that we need to bring tourists here that we can feed the people. And I'm sharing this because I want people to understand that every turn we make, it is about helping to create the conditions that will allow us to provide for the people and give people a future. And so this is why we need people to understand the whys and wherefores of what we're doing, and this is why we're reporting on that fiscal framework to help them to understand. Critical, sir, to achieving the objective of getting our people to their destination would be the transformation of the public service. And therefore, if we are going to be able to take projects and initiatives and make those projects work so that they benefit people, you've got to spend money in terms of the transformation and reform of your public service to make sure that your systems are efficient, to make sure that your people are well trained, and to make sure that they are delivering the service and delivering on time with the specific projects. And that is why I welcome the reforms that we're making, for example, in relation to the issue of welfare, the reforms we're making in relation to our sports policy, the reforms we're making in terms of education. All of these are important to help us deliver. But what has that meant? That our civil servants have had to adjust and to respond to the demand that we need to operate differently to improve what we're doing, to change how we are accustomed working in order to deliver in a way that helps us to provide for our people and to ensure that we continue to be a people-centered government and a people-centered country. So keeping that vehicle performing and in good order is important. But the second thing is that your vehicle will need constant injections of gas or fuel, diesel, in order for it to do the job of transporting people on the journey, taking them to their various destinations. And we have provided for that in what we've been doing in terms of our objectives and in terms of the initiatives. So that the excellent work that is being done under the leadership of the Honourable Member for St. Michael North, with the Ministry of Industry, Science, Technology, etc., and the Export Barbados, they have designed a life sciences park that is going to help us to be able to boost our exports in terms of manufactured goods. And this is an important thing for us because we're going to be able to create more jobs for Barbadians there. Then there's the Heritage District. The Heritage District simply is Barbados. We have got to use everything that we have around us to help us to build out an economy that will allow all Barbadians to participate in some area of economic activity that is attractive to them and that they can earn a living. And therefore, taking our heritage and taking the stories around our heritage and the practices around our heritage and the locations that mark our heritage, all of these are important to take them and turn them into goods, services, and experiences which will allow us to earn money, that we can keep the economic tank filled with gas and diesel. What we are seeking to do in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade in order to work towards keeping that vehicle filled with diesel and gas is commercial diplomacy or commercial diplomacy program. And what this simply is, we at the moment do not have sufficient resources to be able to send out people to help us promote and sell all the goods and services which Barbados can produce. Our enterprises, all of them don't have the resources that they are going to be able to go there and do that job for themselves. So one of the things that we are intensifying within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade is to use our existing network of missions, our existing network of honorary councils, and what we're currently working on is how can we use and deploy them to help and assist us in this job of promoting Barbadian goods and services so that we can make sure that we have enough fuel in the tank to keep this economy going. Now, one of the ways to increase your resources to keep the economy going is to better manage your spending. And you will see from the report that they would have spoken about where we had shortfalls or where we had sudden demands, that we had to put some things on hold and shift position in order to be able to respond to the emergencies. So we had to put on hold the residency phase of the Youth Advanced Corps, the housing and population census, the digital ID card, and so on. And there were a couple other programs we had to put on hold while we shifted resources into key areas that matter to the people in St. James South and across this country. So 10 million would have gone to the welfare department in additional grants because of the tremendous demand that was there. And Mr. Speaker, I understand it very well, and so do you. In our constituencies, we had people who were knocked flat by the COVID and the economic downturn, and they were in urgent and desperate need of help. And so we had to respond as quickly as we could. In addition, we had to put the 10 million to the Household Survival Program and to the adoptive family. And these were cash transfers that were able to help our vulnerable families. The National Assistance Board to establish the Community Elder Care Program, 3.5 million. 10 million for QEH to assist with the current operations. Transport Board to meet the cost of being able to move Barbadians backwards and forwards. Relief to vendors and operators of small shops, 3.5 million. Tablets and laptops for our children. I remember at West Terrace, I was so relieved when we were able to get sufficient laptops and to help our children with access to the internet, so as to minimize the loss that they would experience in relation to their schooling. All of that is important, that by shifting resources, when you need to shift resources to meet immediate needs, we were able to do that. But we also had to look at ways that we were going to save money, ways in which we were going to balance back things so that spending in one area did not destabilize everyone. And one of those areas is the area of pension reform. Pension reform is absolutely essential for this country at this time. One, because it's an older population, so you have a lot of people who need to draw on the pension. But at the same time, you have smaller numbers actually contributing into your NIS. And therefore, you have to make sure that the demands of this moment do not deplete the NIS so severely that we are unable to respond to the generations coming behind who would have been paying in and would need to have the response from the NIS or to have response from government's pension program, etc. All these are things that are absolutely important. And then in relation to the government procurement program, that is something that I am eagerly looking forward to, because government's procurement program can be so transformative and it can stimulate the economy in a significant way when it is properly managed and deployed. One, it is an easy way, Mr. Speaker, to be able to involve your small businesses, being able to get business, to help them not only stay afloat, but to help them to employ people. And this is important. And that is why every care must be taken by every ministry to see how we can take the opportunities available in government procurement to be able to empower our small businesses. A lot of our large businesses are large because of their access to government procurement. And therefore, it is a route that we can use to help small businesses to do the same. This is how we will help them to build scale. Then there's the reform of the state enterprises, and the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central will have spoken to that we have to continue that journey to make sure that things are being spent well and that we are not becoming bloated and undermining the stability of the Barbadian economy. Now, sir, when you are planning your fiscal framework, it is not only the internal needs that you have to consider in order to determine how you're going to spend that money. You have got to consider the external realities that you have to face and that you have to manage in order to protect your domestic people. And sometimes when we listen to people who have not had the opportunity to be informed, for example, I believe someone made the statement that they don't understand what a war in Ukraine has to do with the price of fuel. That was surprising to me. Because as we all know, if the Europeans lower or start cutting off how much fuel they're buying from Russia, it's only obvious they have to get it from somewhere else. That somewhere else will be where we are buying our fuel from. What that will do is stimulate those persons who sell fuel to raise the price of that fuel. That is how the economic dynamics go across the world. And therefore, as a government within foreign affairs and foreign trade, we have to be constantly looking at, anticipating, listening out for what are the dynamics that will be taking place in the world that will have an impact on Barbados and Barbados's capacity to be able to respond, to be able to help people so that we can do the work of the housing, so we can do the roads that we need to do. And even as we speak, we are currently having a meeting of the North American hemispheric group of all of our missions and consulates and so on. And what are they doing? They're spending time now planning and talking through how are we going to be able to help Barbados achieve its objectives? What are those objectives and how are we going to engage with the United States, with Canada, to collaborate with them to see how we can achieve the results that are needed for Barbados. And I want to say kudos to them for that effort this morning. So it is important that we pay attention to what is happening. And what does that mean for a government that is planning for a population? It means that you have to anticipate that there are likely challenges and you have to put something aside for it. You need to keep some elbow room. And I'm sure that the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central will be able to share with us some of the things that they do to help create a little elbow room that in case something happens, we can get up and we can respond. So there are a number of things, sir, that I was a little concerned about in relation to things you hear in the public space and by people who really should know better. Mr. Speaker, I'm a householder. I go to the supermarket like everybody else. I go in and I see the prices as well. And the prices on some items are hot. No two ways about it. But what is not understood by the average public when we talk about the prices protocol that we have agreed just day before yesterday, or I think it was Friday, to renew the prices protocol, the anticipation of the average Barbadian is that the cost of all goods would go down. That is not true. Of the 47 items that we have prioritized as essential to a household, as critical for the health of a family, we have identified those and worked with our commercial businesses and say to them, we ask you to limit your profit level. Does that reduce the original cost of the item? No, Mr. Speaker. That cost can still be rising, and the percentage of your VAT, of your import duty, the percentage of the markup will further exacerbate that price as the cost of that item and the cost of its shipping rises. So what does the prices protocol do? It slows down the height to which the item would go if unchecked. But because there's that push on the pricing from outside, it will continue to rise, but not as quickly. So what does that mean, Mr. Speaker? It means that if I am purchasing a block of cheese and it would normally retail at $6, under these current conditions of increased prices, increased transport costs, when it hits the port and it attracts a duty, and then it is impacted by the cost of the business and impacted by their profit, unchecked, it is possible that that block of cheese could go to $15, $16, or $17. But if the government can limit how much duty they put on it, if they can zero rate it, if the businesses can limit their profit level, instead of rising from 6 to 16, it might just go to 10. So it will still be an expense that the household will have to cope with, but it is not as huge an expense as if it was unchecked. This is what this government has done in order to shield us, to make sure that we provide for the most vulnerable by ensuring that we try to take some control and slow down the pace of the pricing to give us breathing room that we can step up. And that is important, sir. Now, in order to do what we are doing and what the team is doing in relation to this fiscal framework, there's so many things that they have to pay attention to when they are seeking to put this together. It's a very complicated process. Most of us probably could not follow all of the economics surrounding it. But the end result, when they have finished putting it together, is one that will help us as a nation to be able to weather the storm and go forward. So they have to balance things like the debt to GDP ratio. So they have to be careful about financing, about taking loans, what loans you take, what interest rate you take. And there's a whole set of elements that have to be considered to be able to do that. Now, one of the things that I find is a problem, if we go back to the bus taking people and dropping them at the various places, all the passengers on board, sometimes you get this person getting in the vehicle and they want to make the other passengers miserable. When they know it here hot, when they know that this bumpy road here breaking my back, and they try to incite the passengers that something wrong. Driver trying to get you to your destination, trying to take the best route, trying to avoid the traffic jams, trying to avoid the accident to get you there and to get you there safely. But there's always somebody who wants to climb on board and create a problem for you. Now, sir, it amazes me. Now, if you just want to create trouble, you can do that by saying anything. Complain about the price of the bus fare, complain about everything. But if you are seeking to promote yourself as someone who has the capability of driving that bus better, planning the route better, and dealing with it better, when you speak, you must show that you are cognizant not only of the needs of the people, but you're cognizant of the external realities, and that you are crafting a position that takes that into account while at the same time getting people to that destination. Now, sir, when you borrow funds, you are given funds for specific purposes. It's not somebody gives you money and you can go and spend it how you like. That they give you to go and buy a pair of shoes to go to school, and you decide that you're going to spend it on glasses or a hairdo. People will not give you money and allow you to take it and spend it in areas that they have not agreed to, because it is their money. So we get money for climate, for housing, for roads, and so on. But nobody will give you any for welfare. Nobody's going to give you money to be able to give to your private sector that is floundering. That money has to come from the taxes which the people pay. It got to come from the bus fare then. And what that means is that if we are going to be able to respond to the needs of people and ensure that we get as wide a spread as possible, being able to meet the needs of many people and not just those who can afford it because they're earning, then taxation is what will help us take money out of some of the pockets, put it all together, and then redistribute it so that everybody who is in need can at least get something to stay alive in a time of crisis and in a time of storm. So when someone can get up and stand in the middle of a set of small businesses that are trying to earn a dollar and speak about you should lower taxes without thinking through that these same small businesses were ones when they could not make a dollar during COVID and during the ash were able to be in receipt of monies to help keep them afloat and that they could continue to function. You are making this statement among people who are able to go to the trust loans department to get a loan to be able to start a business. These are people who were able to go to fund access and to borrow money to start this business. And that money comes from taxation. Had we dropped the taxation lower than it is now, we did drop it. But if we were to drop it lower, it would have made it impossible for those vendors immediately around that person to be doing exactly what they're doing, plying their trade and staying alive because a government was available to assist them, to give them that little leg up, to stop that business from going down through the tube. But you know what was even, thank you, Mr. Speaker, you know what was even more amazing? That person's job also depends on those taxes. That's how they get paid. So to try to create among Barbadians a sense that this government is oppressing them with taxes, sir, Barbadians are too smart. The good people of St. James South showed their wisdom when they made their choice, because they recognize that talk is talk, but the capacity to manage an economy, the capacity to manage their affairs, the capacity to understand all the dynamics underneath the economy and to come up with a well-planned, well-thought-out program, a good fiscal framework to safely guide us through some turbulent waters does not always reside in the person who complains the loudest and the hardest. I've always said, anybody could pass and criticize how a house is being built, but that does not mean they can build a house. And so I would like to recommend to Barbadians, don't get sidetracked by anybody or any group that is unable to recognize competence and capacity to be able to manage your affairs. Your life is too important. The lives of your children are important. Your future and your old age is important. Always go for the group that demonstrates that they know what to do, they know how to do it, and they remain committed to your care, to your prosperity, and will exert every effort, work every day, work long hours to ensure that Barbadians have a good life. And sir, we demonstrate that even by having Parliament today on Valentine's Day. It's not the first time. I remember I worked through a Valentine's Day in Parliament, got home 8 o'clock and had to beg pardon to my husband. Yes. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to commend the fiscal framework. I am very proud of the excellent work, again, as I said, of our team. I'm happy that at a time such as this, that we are here to help nurture Barbados through this very difficult time. And sir, I will even take it upon myself to tell you that I and all of my colleagues are committed to the well-being of this country. And we are prepared to work and work hard, get gray, lose hair, gain weight, headaches, lose sleep, whatever it is we have to do to ensure that this country is safe. And I just want to wish every Barbadian all the best for Valentine's Day, and we look forward to serving you now and in the future. God bless and thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank both honourable members for their very spirited contribution to this debate. It is important that certainly these perspectives are shared with the public. And I can say through you to honourable members that our commitment to transparency, accountability, and openness is firm. We are in as it relates to the public procurement process. I can safely say that once the system is fully launched, as I reiterated and engaged a few people recently, we have to change, I say we, not just the institutions, but the public will have to change the way that we interface, certainly from a technological perspective. And the idea really is to cascade the information as widely as possible. The issues to be addressed in relation to the assessment of tenders, and within that public procurement process, the sharing of information. So if a tender goes out, sir, and there is a query to the entity, that query would be and the answer will be shared anonymously with all those who may have tendered already as part of the process to ensure that nobody, sir, is disadvantaged in any way in relation to that, such that, and that is not to say that it doesn't happen now, it is just that we are trying to make sure that it happens in a more seamless way in relation to how the process is done. One of the things that we are working to do is to also ensure that the integration with the other systems of government are there, so that with respect to the assessment of tenders and all of that process, that there's a clear link between what Treasury is doing, what the entities are doing, what the other regulators, if you like, so like BRA and NAS and all of those, in relation to making sure that everything is clean, so that it avoids people having to go all over the place in order to be able to produce the documentation for the tendering process. And that work is continuing, and therefore, notwithstanding the technical work being done in the background, it is also our intention, and certainly the Honourable Member for St. James South would be happy, as we are part of the CARICOM framework, and as things are advertised within CARICOM, it is our intent to ensure then that information in relation to tenders that are in the CARICOM space, or even in the international space, that we can push those opportunities to those persons who are registered on the system, such that it is not just the government of Barbados and agencies tenders which will be there, but equally regional tenders in the first instance, and where appropriate, sir, international tenders will be also provided to local suppliers, and they will have the opportunity to decide whether they want to participate or not, in the same way that others from outside who, when we publish ours, will have the opportunity equally, once registered, to be able to respond. I think in a very deliberate way, and I know that we have had to make some very strategic decisions about fast-tracking procurement because of COVID-19. Those contracts are still to be laid, and I will honour that commitment, sir, very, very, very soon. And I give the Honourable Member for St. Michael South Central that assurance that will be done. But as it relates to the process, naturally, we have tried to ensure that within the execution of the procurement process for each agency and ministry, certainly the affirmative action clauses that we have put in place, the new system will allow us to do that in a much more streamlined way. All of the, as you may or may not know, sir, still a lot that is being done with procurement now is still done in the usual way. People got to sign 3 copies of this and by the thing, and it got to be in the boxer and all of that. And the truth is, we've made improvements, but we have to take it the full hog now, so that it actually reduces the cost of people actually having to prepare the tender documentation, and it will, for the most part, then be a critical part of the business facilitation framework of government. And I think the opportunity to share directly, depending on your choice in the setup, to share regional tenders as well as international tenders will be an added feature, which now people will have to have heard or be interested in that specific space. So I think that value added will bring greater opportunities, I think, for ordinary Barbadians. It is work in progress, and we will continue to upgrade as we move along. And whilst I know that between the implementation of the payment systems, the new procurement system, getting people familiar with keeping their records, and I want to encourage people to continue, certainly the business community, small, medium, and large, to utilize the payment systems, because it's going to be important to be able to open up access to credit, because it's easier for you to get your records kept, and therefore as a tool be able to drive more business in the country in terms of expansion. So there's some things that we haven't done on this side. It means that the private sector, the change in behavior, if you like, sir, is going to be important in order for us to be able to realize the growth faster. And therefore, if we do these things, then I'm confident that not just the debt to GDP and all of that, but it is really about the inclusive growth that we're after, that we certainly will achieve that. One element, sir, just very quickly, as the Honourable Member for St. Michael South Central raised with me, and just give me 1 second, sir. There it is. And I thank the Honourable Members for the suggestions that they have made in relation to recommendations for the report. And it's something that we will work to incorporate, because as with everything, sir, we've been phasing in things. So whilst we are pulling together the various bits of information, you will notice that from one report to the next, that there's more and more information being provided to the public, and we do that to make sure that we get the sequencing right and we are comfortable with respect to the volume of information that is potentially going into the space. But one of the things that the honourable member asked me to raise is in relation to the subject of PPPs, and to have a specific definition for PPP in the document in the context of what we are talking about here. And the truth is, as you may recall, sir, and just very quickly, we had engaged in a specific process to deal with the IFC and the airport. And that type of PPP is the kind of PPP that is usually referred to in the context of bringing large-scale type of investment, where facilities are being either managed or built, owned, leased, transferred. Those types of arrangements are what we would typically be referring to, but we will include a specific definition of PPP in the documents so that for the future, when we say that they don't exist PPP arrangements currently in the government, or that they do, that it meets the definition of the threshold. But as with all things, sir, we always come to this place and indicate what it is that we are doing with government's assets. And I take the very clear point that a publicly available asset register is critical, and that's why we are working right now to be able to look at all of government's assets, whether central government or within the context of state-owned enterprises. And those are physical assets, but equally, sir, any digital assets or other intangibles that are there, we are currently working to ensure that we can chronicle what those assets are, physical and otherwise, establish some type of valuation process to be able to value those said assets, and in order to, for the purpose of the legacy, the proposed legacy fund, to be able then to create effectively, sir, a balance sheet for Barbados, a balance sheet upon which we can leverage, such that we are not just only focused on the metric of debt to GDP, but with the full utilization of said assets, that we can, as I said, sir, be able to include as many people in those potential for investment opportunities, such that we can build greater resilience in the country. We have been very clear in our own mind, sir, that notwithstanding the fact that we have been careful in terms of the arrangements that we've put in place to allow persons to settle any outstanding debts to government, as well as some state-owned enterprises, we will continue to exercise that very clear objective, sir, because we understand and appreciate that the original set of arrangements that were done pre-COVID, COVID created obviously some disruption for people, and we allowed persons to come in and work with the various agencies to rejig those payment arrangements, and therefore once persons can continue to honor those commitments, then the government obviously will be able to continue to ensure that we hold people's hands as appropriate. This fiscal framework, sir, I think as the honourable member for St. James South indicated, this is really about how we can include as many people in the process as possible. As the honourable member for St. Michael South Central indicated, it is part of us accounting to the people for what we have done. We do it when there's going to be an opportunity again, obviously, in a few weeks' time in relation to the budget process. We will do this again in terms of the fiscal framework, but equally, sir, at any point where government needs to account to persons, whether it is in this place, whether it is ministers having post-cabinet briefings, or as we continue the Parish Speaks mechanism, sir, We are finding different ways of providing information to the public, and once the public can consume that information as provided and not allow themselves to become distracted by those on the outside who saying that the bus hop, as the honourable member for St. James South has so clearly articulated. They always got people, sir, that ready to confuse the place. And that's just how life is. And therefore I say to Barbadians, stay focused on the driver. As long as the driver is maintaining course and communicating with you about what's coming ahead, then I think you can be confident in the skill of the driver to be able to get you to your destination. And whilst you may have to take a detour from time to time, the objective, sir, and the mission is still there. And therefore, I say to Barbadians, stay the course, and as the drivers of this bus called Barbados, sir, we will continue to communicate to Barbadians in a myriad of ways, opening up opportunities, more opportunities for accountability and transparency, sir, that as we introduce the systems for said accountability, that they too must adopt those systems that are intended to open up and provide greater opportunities, sir, for transparency. And so, sir, I want to thank the honourable members for the debate, for their contribution to the debate, sir, and I beg to move that this resolution do now pass. I'm obliged to you.
The question is that this resolution do now pass. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This resolution stands passed. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the suspension of the House until 2:30 p.m.
The question is that this honourable chamber be suspended until 2:30 p.m. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This honourable chamber stands suspended until 2:30 p.m.